What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another edition of LITD Reviews. And today we got a special one. I am reviewing the Convalescence's newest album, Monument of Misery, which came out on June 27th, off of Legend Records. I haven't gotten to this one yet because I was waiting until I had a chance to see them on their current tour cycle. I did just see them last weekend, and I picked up this album at the show at the Michigan Metal Fest. And if you want to check out our review of that show, that should be up online already, hopefully. So let's get into this album a little bit. Bio. First of all, for those of you who may not be familiar with the Convalescence, I'm aware that they are still a little bit more of an underground band. They're not quite as big as some others. So I'll let you know who they are. Founded in Toledo, Ohio in 2011 by vocalist Keith Wampler. Originally started as a side project for members of other bands to give them something to do while their main projects were like recording or working on other projects. So the Convalescence and it still does consist of former members of Blood of the Prophets, From the Depths, and Hard Heart Away. However, after the release of their first EP, which was called Memories back in 2011, the Convalescence became all of the members' main focus. The band now consists of Toby Wright on guitar and vocals, Zach Lunsford on guitar and vocals, Ronald Buckley on bass, Charles Weber on drums, Katie McCrimmon on keys and vocals, and Keith Wampler on lead vocals. Now, it's actually really interesting because just a couple years ago is when I really started like going back out to shows a lot and stuff. And when I was younger, when I first started going to shows in the mid first decade of the 2000s, there were these bands that I would see at every show. They were opening for every single band that I would go to see, pretty much anyone, from Children of Bodom to Cannibal Corpse to Devil. Every single time I went and saw any of these bands, there was always one band that would open for pretty much everyone. And that band today is the Black Dahlia Murder. Now they are what they are. That is the experience I'm having right now with the Convalescence. Almost any time I want to go see someone. Now they're Ohio. They're not local from Michigan like Dahlia was, but I've seen them so many times in the past couple of years, just opening for everyone else. And so I see the work they're putting in. I think I read an interview that said that since 2014, they've played every year. They've had at least 100 shows. So they're touring relentlessly. They are putting the work in, and I think it's really paying off because I saw them live and I felt like there was not to say that they weren't good last year, but I felt I saw an improvement to this year. Like they really fucking crushed that stage at Michigan Metal Fest, and they did an excellent job with this album. But first of all, I want to talk about the album's cover art. Beautiful. Like it's very striking. Like off the bat, like it's one of the first thing. Obviously, it's the first thing that you notice, and I absolutely fucking loved it. It's by an artist. His name is Conky Greenway. All right, definitely be sure to check out Conky Greenway. Look him up. He's got a website and a list of, he's worked with many, many, many bands for many different things. He's worked with Suicide Silence, Carnifex, Veils of Maya, The Faceless, Unearth, Miss May I, Cataclysm, Shadows Fall, Winds of Plague, Acacia Strain, King Diamond, Rings of Saturn, The Agonist, Oceano, Judas Priest, Epica, Aborted. Yeah, I'm just reading the bands that I know. Whitechapel. There are a lot of other bands here, though, that I'm just reading off the ones real quick that I know to give you an idea of some of this guy's work. He is fantastic, and I highly recommend you checking him out. Now, this album was released on June 27th, 2019 off Legend Records. All right, let's dive in. The first half of this album, okay? I'm splitting this review into kind of two halves of the album. It's a 10-track album. It's about 37 minutes long. Not terribly long. You can get through it pretty quick, and it's phenomenal. The first half of the album immediately with the title track, Monument of Misery, starts crushingly. All right, the title track to me felt like a fucking wild werewolf trying to break out of a cage, and the rest of the album is its rampage through wherever it is. That's what it feels like to me. It dials up the heavy to 11 from their previous. By the way, this is their fourth album. All right, their previous album, which was released in 2017, called "This Is Hell," which also featured artwork from Conky Greenway. And yeah, this is their fourth full-length album. They have a self-released in 2012 called Unmasking the Betrayer. 2014 they released The Process. 2016 they released Poison Words, and then This Is Hell in 2017 and Monument of Misery now in 2019. So this is their fourth full-length studio album. Or is it one self-release album, EP? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth. I'm sorry. This is their fifth full-length. I'm sorry. They have one EP in their fifth full-length, according to this at least. Hard to find stuff on these underground bands sometimes. More underground bands sometimes. But yeah, so yeah, it really fucking stepped it up from the last album, This Is Hell, which is the first album I discovered them on at a previous Metal Fest a few years ago. And yeah, like from the entire album, to me, it's just a fucking like, it's crushing. It's a crushing cacophony of melodic black and just straight death metal, all in symphonic, all just kind of melded into one. Now, I'm not sure who the Convalescence lists as their main influences. However, to me personally, I hear a very heavy Black Dahlia Murder influence on a lot of these songs, especially on songs like The Pit, where Keith on vocals, I think he does a great job on this song. He goes really low and high in a death range and then does like almost a hardcore yell at one point, which I really liked a lot. But at one point in that song, in The Pit, he screams, "A parasite in life." And to me, when he screams that line, if you close your eyes, it almost feels like Trevor from Dahlia. Really cool. I really liked it. Also, at one point on the House of Suffering, I hear a Dahlia-esque influence on that song as well. However, this song has some really cool symphonic interludes in it that I really like a lot, and it has a really cool guitar solo intro that I enjoyed. Also, the breakdown on the song "The Return," which feels Matt Magetchi, I believe. I think that's how you pronounce his name, from Cryptopsy. It's one of the most brutal fucking breakdowns I've heard in a long time. It starts with like a ding, like a bell tolling. Think For Whom the Bell Tolls or Hell's Bells, like that kind of bell sound, and then just like just crushing fucking awesome breakdown. The first half of this album ends on a more social note, as opposed to a gory one, with the song "Strip Them of Faith," which to me, now keep in mind, I wasn't able to find liner notes on any of this album at all, so I'm just taking a guess here. But based on the lyrics, what it sounded like they were talking about to me was it's a song about greed and losing one's humanity to the pursuit of their own individual wealth. I really like this song, and I also think it really does. In this song, the vocalist shows off his range, probably a little bit more so than in almost any other song on the album. Does a really great job on that song, and I really like. I like it when, because so I'm sitting here reading the lyrics, and the first four songs are just some of the coolest, most gut-wrenching, like, awesome, gory fucking lyrics that I've read since I sat down and read Dahlia and fucking Cannibal. And then you get this kind of still really awesome and gory, but like this definitely has some more social overtones to it. I really enjoyed them putting that in there. Now, that's the first half of the album. It's nonstop, crushing, straight through in their, I don't even know what subgenre to put these guys in. Honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, they're just the heavy fucking metal. Like, they're such a blend of so much. And it's because all of the members have such different musical backgrounds, and they all contribute to the writing of the music on the album. So that alone is going to bring in many different subgenre sounds that are blending together. On the second half of the album, though, it takes a pretty dramatic musical shift. It goes from straightforward heavy fucking metal to it's still heavy fucking metal, just a little less straightforward in the sense that they do some different things with song structure. It seems like they take some chances a couple of times, and I think all of them really paid off. Out of the gate on the second half of the album with the song Legacy of Blood, it takes a musical shift in that from the styles of the first half of the album. For example, there's a keyboard part in the beginning of the song that is, you could almost put it sounds like quintessential 80s synthesizer keyboard. Like but it's like really quick. They do it for a second, but I was like, holy shit, like what was that in there? And they threw it in. It's right in the intro, and I actually thought it paid off. I thought it was pretty cool. The rest of the song takes on its own sort of groove though, with a constant kind of like a build riff throughout the song, and that I've never heard them do. I don't remember anything like that on This Is Hell, and certainly nothing up to this point on this album. But I really like it. I think they got a little experimental on this song, and I think it paid off because it ended up being one of my favorite songs in the album so far. Now, continuing with kind of like a turn in the music, the song One of the Dead is the first song on the album and the only song on the album to feature clean vocals by the fantastic and wonderful Kate McCrimmon, who is the band's keyboardist. However, if you're familiar with the band and you know the album This Is Hell, you know they feature her clean vocals I'm not going to say heavily, but prominently on the last album. She's featured pretty heavily in more than one track. On this album, it's just one track, and it's just for, I want to say, like 2 lines in the hook. And look, typically I don't like mixing clean and guttural vocals. Typically I don't like, I've said that on the podcast before, typically I don't like it. Sometimes there are exceptions, but typically I like pretty much just guttural vocals. I don't like, besides the older bands, the classics like Megadeth, Iron Maiden, stuff like that I love, Judas Priest, I typically like the heavier stuff from today's genres. So whenever bands do that, I typically don't like it. However, sometimes I do, because the reality is the clean vocals can just be another tool in the arsenal to actually make the song sound heavier if used correctly. And to me, that's exactly what they did on One of the Dead on this one. They use the cleans in a really cool way, which almost gives an extra oomph to the rest of the song, which I actually really liked a lot. And and oddly enough, her cleans on that song are probably one of my favorite parts on the album, honestly. Like, they really are fantastic, and I think they did a really good job. I liked it a lot. Now, there's Disposal of the Week, which features Julian Kearsley from The Faceless, and then the final track of the album, which is Eternal Suffering. Both of these tracks, I feel, follow suit, sort of, with, at least thematically, lyrically, with the one Strip Them of Faith. Yeah, I kind of feel like they follow lyrically in the sense that these 2 songs I don't feel are just painting a beautiful gory picture. These songs seem to have some more to them, a little bit deeper lyrically than that, which I'm not saying anything is wrong with. I love the gore. I cannot get enough of it. But when you go a little bit deeper, you're A, taking a risk, and B, it can be really cool, or like people roll their eyes. I like it because on let's see here, on Disposal of the Week, to me, now I'm not sure, again, no liner notes, but to me this song is kind of about technology, I think. and yeah, and just humans' addiction to technology. And then the final track, Eternal Suffering, to me sounded like it's a song about losing a loved one, in a sense, in some form or another. And so those two stuck out to me lyrically, in terms of the themes that they seem to be talking about. And then the final track on the album, The Virus, or not, I'm sorry, not the final track on the album, second to final track on the album, The Virus, is musically another, to me, risk, sharp turn, but huge standout. It's kind of like, they do something weird with the keyboards to where they make them sound like strings, and there's almost a poppy sound. Not pop music sounding, but like a literal like pop sound that's happening, and it sounds like strings kind of doing that popping thing throughout the song. And I thought it sounded really cool, and it kind of like gives the song a certain like lighter feel to it, which I really enjoyed. I don't know. I thought it was fantastic, and it's just another example of how the second half of the album is quite different than the first half of the album, but the risks that they take in the second half, I think, pay off really well. And I liked them all. I think they're all fantastic. All in all, I love this album. I think the guitar and drum work were fantastic, crushing vocals and really cool keyboards. Something to note about this album, I did read an interview with the lead singer. He said the biggest difference on this album from previous albums is that it wasn't written spontaneously in the studio. They actually had time to like write the album and get everything the way they wanted it sounding and get everything right. It's also the first time that they use live drums on the album as opposed to programmed drums. So the drumming on this album really takes off, especially from This Is How. All in all, to me, this album is a gigantic step up from their last album, and I liked their last album a lot, but I really love this album. And if you've never heard of them, if you like Black Dahlia Murder and you don't mind a little like black metal synth mixed in here and there, then I really think you're going to want to check out this album. If you like stuff like that, to me, that's really what this sounds like, and it really fucking soars. I absolutely loved it. I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5 devil horns. That's going to be our rating system for the time being, at least for this one. Really fantastic album. Absolutely great work. Again, it came out June 27th on Legend Records, and it's the Convalescence Monument of Misery. Let me make sure you get a shot of that. Beautiful artwork by Conky Greenway. Absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend you check out this album, and yeah, so that's about it for this review. We've got more reviews coming this week. I've got the Michigan Metal Fest podcast episode, which should be out by the time this is out, I believe. And then we're going to have a review of the new Carnifex World War X album coming out also later this week. And keep eyes peeled. We got a new Slipknot album coming out this week too, so that'll be exciting. But that's going to be about it from me in the Crypt. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all enjoy the new Convalescence album as much as I did. I highly recommend checking it out. Thank you all so much for watching this. I love you all to death. Raise your horns, bang your head. Good night.